Good day, and welcome back to our Unite Behind the Science Forum. My name is Matt Tranchen. I serve as the president of March for Science, and I am joined by my friend, colleague, and partner, Sophia Kianni, the Global South focal point for Youngo. Sophia, how are you?
Doing great, Matt. Thank you so much. How about you?
I'm good. Excited for our next interview. We've had the privilege of putting spotlights on the Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group members. But our next guest has become a good friend and partner of March for Science, and really excited to highlight her tremendous work.
Yeah, super exciting. Our next guest is a very, very special person. Her name is Sophia Kianni from the United States. She's the founder of Climate Cardinals and also a member of the Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group. Hello, Sophia. Welcome.
Hey, Sophia.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Well, look, just jumping right into it. Want to, of course, touch on the your work with Climate Cardinals, but we'd love for you to talk about your experience as a member of the Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group. Can you talk about really why this was created to really give young people the voice and input on such a global scale, and what have been some of the key takeaways from this experience?
Well, as we've seen over the past few years, youth climate activists really have been leading the charge for climate action. We've mobilized millions of people to come out and strike. We have progressive visions, and we truly care about climate change because it's an issue that's going to disproportionately affect our generation. And taking all of those factors into account, it makes sense for this youth advisory group to be created because young people really do need a meaningful way to engage with high-level diplomacy and to actually have a meaningful input into the climate strategy of the United Nations. And so with that said, I definitely do think it's been an awesome experience so far to directly be able to talk to the Secretary General about issues that I'm passionate about, like environmental racism, really including Indigenous people and international climate discussions, and of course, language accessibility in the climate movement. And I think that this is a really great model for other governments, for other high-level dialogues, to see that it's absolutely possible for young people to be included in these discussions. And not only is it possible, I really think it should be expected.
Yeah, I love that. And when you mentioned the climate movements, the climate protests that have taken place over the last few years. I know you've been involved in that as well. Can you talk about that personal journey for you, and what got you involved in this space? And can you talk about what that how that journey has informed what you're doing today?
Well, I really became passionate about climate change after my experience in Iran, seeing how horribly climate change was affecting the Middle East. And so I wanted to be able to work with other climate activists to tackle this issue. And so I spent my high school years organizing with various different grassroots organizations. So I worked with Fridays for Future, Zero Hour, Extinction Rebellion on national and international levels to organize these huge strikes that we've seen over the past few years. And so I leveraged all the experience that I gained with those organizations to actually found Climate Cardinals, because I realized while those organizations are all doing incredible work, that they weren't tackling the issue of language accessibility, which is what I want to do with Climate Cardinals.
That's absolutely great. And I think that's a very, very valid point, right? As youth and coming from so many different backgrounds, the youth movement is definitely not a homogeneous movement. So it's really amazing to see how Climate Cardinal is trying to actually bridge the gap, which is a biggest barrier is the language barrier in access to information, access to knowledge about what's happening. As a member of the Youth Advisory Group, how do you think you can leverage this access that you have, the reach that you have to other young people from across the world?
I think it's critical for us as youth advisory members to be meeting with people from our countries, meeting with young people from all over the world, so that obviously, like, we're only 7 young people, like, we don't represent every single climate activist. And so it's so important for us to be going out and meeting these activists who are doing the work so that we can relay their sentiments back to the UN Secretary General. So like the outcome report that we produced, it outlined like 6 key actions that young people from over like 20 countries want world leaders to take. I really want to make sure that we're continuing to hold information like sessions and dialogues like that, so that we're not only just like speaking for ourselves, but we're actually speaking for hundreds and thousands of activists when we are going and approaching the Secretary General with our demands.
You know, when we talk about, you know, the power of these movements and really being built on decentralized leadership, right? People in communities stepping up, taking action. What's, I imagine, fueling that and inspiring that is an understanding of the state of the climate crisis, right? Understanding the world that young people have inherited from those generations that came before them. With Climate Cardinals, it seems like you've found a really meaningful solution to addressing the lack of information that's really preventing a lot of people around the world from understanding the crisis as it is. Now, you launched Climate Cardinals less than a year ago, right?
I think it's been exactly a year and
Not a year. Are you having a 1-year anniversary? Is this
a
the
year and 1 month?
Okay, cool. Well, so all right. I know this is you know, really blown up. Can you talk about? I mean, where's Climate Cardinals now? You know, how many volunteers are involved? How many languages are being translated, and how can people tuning in who want to get involved and want to contribute to this critical part of the climate crisis solution? How can they help?
So we started out with, I'd say 10 volunteers, which were just my friends. And we've grown to over 8,000 volunteers in 41 countries. And we've translated over 500,000 words of climate information into over 100 languages. So it's been crazy. We've had an amazing year, and I'm so excited for us to continue this progress. And for anyone who's watching who wants to get involved, you can just go to climatecardinals.org, and then you can check out our different tabs. So you can go to the volunteer tab if you want to translate, or you can go to the join our team tab if you want to work on our teams like research and social media.
Absolutely, that's amazing. It's great to see the progress that you've made in such a short span, and it's also very inspiring. If there's one thing that you'd like to tell other youth leaders, people who are not, who don't know where to begin maybe, but want to do something, what is that you would tell them?
I honestly think the best way to get involved in the climate movement is by reaching out to other climate activists. And so when I first started, I had no idea what to do. I saw all these amazing climate activists, and I was so engrossed in their work, and I knew I wanted to work with them, but I didn't know how. And so I reached out to them over Instagram. I slid in their DMs and I said, hey, like, I'm Sophia. I've been like translating climate information for my relatives the past few years, and I would love to work with you guys. I really believe in what you're doing. And I was like, this is how I think that I can make your work even better. And so many of those people responded to me, and they gave me positions within their organizations. That's how I started working with 0 Hour. That's how I started working with Fridays for Future and Extinction Rebellion. And so I just encourage you to reach out to people that you're inspired by and ask how you can work with them and how you can help further the work that they're doing. Because I really believe that the best way to get involved is by first joining another organization and really supporting the work that other young people are doing.
Yeah, I love that. I also think it's you know, the issue of the climate crisis is so all-consuming. Sometimes it's hard to figure out where to start and how you fit in, and not just on an individual level, but from an organizational level. You know, no one organization is solving the climate crisis. No one government, no one philanthropist. You know, we're all a piece of the puzzle. And so figuring out really how we fit in from an organization, from an individual, you really only can best understand that once you really immerse yourself in the movement and see where the needs are. I think that's, one of the reasons why what you've built with Climate Cardinals is so impactful and effective, is because you looked at the space, you saw a need, you found a way to solve that need, and now you've created a successful pilot and you're beginning to scale. I mean, it's an incredible story, Sophia. It's really exciting. All right, so another question for you. So you have this, amazing experience and opportunity informing what is probably the most impactful global climate leader in the world, which is the United Nations Secretary General. Here in the United States, we have a new government. The Biden administration has taken the helm, representing the United States. Thank goodness. But as we all understand, I think intimately, it's not enough just to elect governments and assume they're going to do what needs to be done. Having a healthy dose of engagement and pressure to find ways to really make sure our elected officials understand what needs to be done and the scale and scope of what's required often needs to have the perspectives that usually aren't around that table. Young people seem to be a critical element of what the UN has recognized needs to be a part of what's informing and advising what they do and why. What advice would you have for our new Biden administration of how they can take some lessons learned of what the UN and maybe other governments are doing to ensure that young people aren't just invited to events? Because look, there are lots of great events that young people get brought to, but how can young people, from your experience, your unique vantage point, how can young people meaningfully be brought in to inform the United States government to ensure that it's doing everything it needs to do?
I definitely think that this experience has showed me that if the UN Secretary General can convene a youth advisory group on climate change, any world leader really can. And I think that this has been a mutually beneficial relationship. I think that the UN Secretary General has benefited from hearing the work that I'm doing, the work that these 6 other amazing young people are doing. And we also are really pushing him to become more progressive and to take into account a more intersectional approach to the climate crisis. And so I do think we bring a lot to the table. And I think that any administration, including the Biden administration, should really think critically about how they can actually have young people at the table and not just talk about us, but actually talk to us. Because we've seen Biden, I know that he says that he admires youth activists and he wants to work with us. And so I would love to see tangible progress towards that statement in the form of either advisory groups or just regular meetings with me or any other young people in the United States, just because I feel like we have ideas and we also have a lot of experience that I would love to see actually meaningfully leveraged so that we can see climate policy effectively passed in the United States.
All right, I have one last question, then I'm gonna kick it over to Hida to close it out. You issued a call to action for young people who want to get more involved in Climate Cardinals. We don't only have young people tuning in. There are several of my contemporaries and even older people. It's true, there are older people than me watching. What would you say to people who are inspired by what you're doing at Climate Cardinals, who also wants to help, not so much even as a volunteer standpoint, but what are the needs of Climate Cardinals as an organization that people, whether it's a philanthropist, a foundation, a partner organization who wants to get involved, are you having a capital raise? What are the greatest needs of the organization that folks who are tuning in who really might be in a position to help? What are those needs?
Well, it would be awesome if we could continue to fundraise. So we have a donation button on our website where anyone can donate to help support the work that I and thousands of young people around the world are doing for free. So that would be awesome. But then just generally, I think that what older people who want to support our work can do, the number one thing is just vote. Please, please go vote for climate-friendly candidates where you live, not even just on a national level, but also on a local level. We really want to see the climate crisis effectively tackled. And the only way it's going to be effectively tackled is through passing effective governmental regulation. And so I think that that is the biggest ask that I and other youth climate activists can really give to you.
Cool.
Absolutely. I think that's a really wonderful ask. All of us need to be very mindful of who we're voting for, whether it's just us as youth, but it's also the adults. We need to be in this together. So final question before we let you go, Sophia. We're here talking about the science. Unite Behind the Science is what we're calling today's event. The IPCC 1.5 degree report, which came out in 2018, clearly talks about the science. It talks about where we need to go, the difference between a 1.5 degrees warmer world and a 2 degrees warmer world. Do you think there is what would be the benefit by the IPCC 1.5 degrees report if it got formally welcomed at COP26 this year?
I think it's absolutely critical because it shows that this is a new year. We're actually taking climate change and scientists seriously. Like you said, the report clearly outlines that if we go past 1.5 degrees of warming, millions of people are going to be displaced because of climate change induced disasters. It's just going to be horrible for our planet, and especially for young people, because this is the planet we're inheriting. And as we get older, this is just going to get worse and worse. And so I definitely think that when world leaders convene, that they talk about this and they formally agree to create targets to meet this 1.5 degree Celsius warming target, because even in the United States, like we see that we've reaffirmed our commitments to the Paris Climate Agreement, but that isn't enough. Like we need to be building on those commitments, and we need to make sure that as a country and as an entire planet, we are taking climate change seriously for the good of our young people.
Well, thank you so much, Sophia. We really appreciate you joining us here today. And for folks tuning in, if you want to get involved in a really meaningful experience, please go to climatecardinals.org and sign up to volunteer, along with the 8,000 other change makers around the world who are participating. And of course, if you'd care to donate and really help make a difference by scaling what is such a tremendously impactful organization, please make a generous contribution and support young people on the front lines addressing the climate crisis. Thank you all for tuning in, and we really appreciate you being a part of Unite Behind the Science. Thanks, Sophia.
Thank you.